Bonjour.
Welcome to So French, the show about the twists and turns, intrigues and insights to all things French.
Every 2 weeks we select the best, most interesting and fascinating of French news stories, all brought to you from our studio in the heart of Paris. My name is Stefan de Vries.
And my name is Sara Bertilsson. And this week, the Notre-Dame trauma, turning into the Notre-Dame drama, with controversy regarding almost everything from the funds donated for its reconstruction, the state of the French heritage sites, and what the new Notre-Dame should look like.
And French drug dealers taking on new methods to retain their clients. Or how about a lottery for the most loyal clients, just like any supermarket chain.
But first, there was this press conference this week, a very, very awaited one.
Yeah.
It was Macron's response to the yellow vest protests that have now been ongoing in France since last year, and also his conclusion of the national debate that he launched as a first response to these yellow vest protests. And it was supposed to, we must say, to have happened 2 weeks ago, but just an hour before it was actually supposed to start, the Notre-Dame fire started, and so it was pushed back. Anyways, finally it got off, and Stefan, you were there.
Yeah.
You went there. What is your take on his first actual press conference since he got elected 2 years ago? I must say that's a little bit, only that information is a bit shocking.
It is.
First press conference
it's
since
incredible,
he got
Yeah, because before he was elected, Macron was very close with the press. He gave a lot of interviews and he was very accessible, of course, because he wanted to get elected. But then when he was elected, he put a big distance between him and the media, because the former president, François Hollande, was known for having lunches and dinners and texting all the time with journalists. And there were a lot of leaks about what was going on at the Élysée. So President Macron, he wanted to be more presidential. And one of the things that he thought was more presidential was not to talk to the press anymore. And he was actually quite condescending about journalists. But I think he realized...
He even moved the Élysée press corps out of the actual Élysée.
Well, that's what he wanted to do, actually, because they never did it, because there was so much...
they're still there?
Yeah, there's still a little press room in the courtyard of the Élysée, because the press agencies like Reuters and AFP, they wanted to be inside the palace to see who is getting in and out. But Macron didn't like that. So he wanted it to expel them. But finally they protested and they're still there. But it shows that Macron has a very complicated relationship with the press. He has also been caught many times saying negative things about journalists. But now, this was the first time. There were about 300 journalists in the Élysée. And it was interesting because he was supposed to start with a speech of 20 minutes, which lasted an hour, of course, that's Macron. And then we were able to ask questions for 2.5 hours. He was very at ease. You see that he likes being, with journalists, in spite of the negative way he talks about them. And he was sitting down. That was also a bit strange, but, it lasted over 3 hours, so it's logical. And then, the journalists, most of the French journalists, of course, are very respectful to the power and authority. So they were not very incisive questions, unfortunately. And, of course, he started with giving a sort of history lesson about what happened, how he discovered the country in those couple of months that he traveled for the Grand National Debate. Which is also a bit surprising because, if you're president and you're supposed to know the country. But, and he also said that the Yellow Vest movements had changed him. Now, then, of course, you would expect many surprises.
Yeah, in what way?
Well, he has to answer the Yellow Vest, but he not really did actually give in to the demands of the Yellow Vest. He did announce lower income tax. But the majority of the French don't pay income tax, and those who do pay much less than in the surrounding countries. So I don't know if it will lead to more purchasing power, because that was one of the main complaints of the Yellow Vests. They want to have be able to spend more with the same salary or higher salaries. So those tax cuts are about 5 billion euros, but he never said how he's going to finance that.
And the question is also, I mean, as you mentioned, this is mostly the middle class that's actually going to benefit from these tax cuts because, and you're talking about a couple of €100 a year.
Yeah, it's probably a year.
Probably a couple of €100 per year. But one of the demands, if I remember correctly, from the Yellow Vest was a cut in the VAT tax, for example, which would be a much more a tax cut for everyone.
Yeah.
And that is not on the table.
He didn't even mention the tax VAT cut because indeed the income tax is more or less progressive. And of course, the VAT is the same for everybody, 20%, or I think 6% on food, something like that. But so that has a bigger impact on lower incomes. But he didn't mention that at all. He did mention the position for single mothers, that there will be some kind of system where alimony for single mothers will be guaranteed by the state. So if the ex-husbands or the father of the children don't pay their alimony, the state will jump in.
It will work both ways.
Fathers as well.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Yeah, but he did mention single
no,
fathers.
Well, the problem is...
Yeah, that's true. He also wants more civil servants in the field and fewer in Paris, because that is also one of the remarks of the Yellow Vest. I think they are right in that. That is, of course, France is very centralized. So the power is in Paris, the decisions are made in Paris, and most of the civil servants who work in ministries in Paris have no idea what's going on in the rest of the country. So, and he's going to do that by opening up civil or public service houses in regions where they have not enough public services.
This has been very criticized, though, because many of the city halls in these small towns that actually already function as this public service hub, they say that, well, why don't we get this? Why can't we do this job? And why? But the problem, what we're doing is that we don't have enough people working here. We can't get funds to actually employ someone. So, you know, the buildings and the hubs are already there, but they don't ever get any funding. So the problem is, are they going to set up a separate, like a parallel system to the city halls, which is going to cost then more money than using a structure that already exists. So it has been a very criticized reform, even though I think on a theoretical level, everybody can agree on that a decentralization of the powers would be something good.
Absolutely,
here in France.
And in some regions of France, I come often in Bretagne, in Brittany, you already have those houses. So you have like the post office and the unemployment office, and sometimes even a doctor, they say, are in the same building, because otherwise it's too expensive. So it already exists. But you're right to say that, how is it going to finance? And he never really talked about all his the financing of all his proposals. And unfortunately, the journalists who asked the question, they didn't ask any questions about that at all.
Why didn't you ask that question,
Well, I tried
Stefan?
to, but I'm an immigrant, so all the questions they were given to the big French media. There was one German correspondent.
I was just going to say,
she got the question, but she's well known at the Élysée because she's some kind of she embodies the French-German relationship. Michaela Wiekel of the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, a very good journalist, by the way, but so. She was like the mascot of all the foreign journalists and European journalists. But it's a shame that the French journalists, they just don't go deep enough. So it was an interesting exercise. He's very at ease, when he has to talk like this in public and to exchange with journalists. So it's a pity he doesn't do that more often. I mean, he said that he was going to meet us more often. I'm not sure he will. The French presidents, they don't really like it.
Well, François Hollande had his yearly press conference that he really...
I checked that. Well, he announced when he became a president, François Hollande, that he would give a press conference at least every 6 months. At the end, he only did 5 big press conferences in 5 years. So, they're not very at ease. I think Nicolas Sarkozy gave 3 or 4 big press conferences. But in a modern democracy, I mean, that's also one of the things that Emmanuel Macron announced, that he wanted to modernize French democracy. In a modern democracy, regular press conferences with the head of state or the head of government is, it's absolutely crucial. And I think it's also one of the reasons why there's such a big gap between the politicians here and the media and the citizens. But he promised to meet us more often, so we'll see. So that was his press conference.
But if we summarize then, so yeah, he did come up with a couple of propositions. Maybe not a major turn from the plan that he actually laid out when he became a president, though there are some smaller changes to it. What has been the reaction?
Well, the reactions were not very positive. Most media said, all this for this, tout ça pour ça in French. And the Yellow Vests, of course, the main reason why he gave this press conference and the Grand National Debate, they were very dissatisfied. They said, is he mocking us? Has he not been listening to us? And so they will take to the streets again. I mean, we're recording this on Saturday, and today will be the 23rd or 24th weekend, I lost count, that the Yellow Vests took to the streets. So we will see. Maybe at the end of this day there will be more participants, and that could be seen as an important indicator of how his proposals are being received. Of course, in a month from now there are also European elections, and in some of his remarks it is clear that he is trying to seduce voters on the right and maybe even extreme right, because he's not doing well in the polls. He's equal with Marine Le Pen. In some polls, Marine Le Pen is in front of him and sometimes just behind him. So he knows there's a big danger that he will do not as well during the European elections in May as he may have hoped. So in general, the reactions are, at the best neutral, but there were many negative reactions, of course. And, everybody, the expectations were so high that everybody was probably...
But would there have been a possibility, because this is what I'm feeling more every time, that what could possibly have been announced that would have made the French happy?
I don't know. And I think they don't know themselves either. They're never happy, Even if he would have announced, I will give you cake every morning and a glass of champagne, all the 68 million French, even then they would have complained, So it is, of course, a very difficult exercise to be a president in this country, especially, if the economy is not doing really well and the unemployment stays very high. We will have to. New
employment numbers came out this week, though, saying that France is now. It is going down, even though it's not. Yeah. It's not dropping in an extreme sense, but it is going down. I think it's around
8.8%,
9%,
and still very high, much higher than in the rest of Europe, apart from Italy and Greece and Spain. But the problem is the unemployment is structural. It's almost 30 years that it's around 9%, whereas all the other European countries, with the exception of Italy and Spain and Greece, their unemployment is now around 5%, and it's going down almost everywhere. So that's a real issue. He didn't talk about unemployment, almost not at all. So I agree, it is very difficult.
He did say, though, that he still aims for 7%, max 7%.
At the end of his presidency.
And that he would consider that as the sort of a good...
Yeah. But 7%, even in 2 years from now, that will probably be the highest of Europe. So it's difficult, but at least now he's talking to us journalists, and through us to the people. And I think that's already a bit of a progress. But the Yellow Vests, they are absolutely not happy.
Vous écoutez So French.
You are listening to So French.
Now, no one has missed that there was a horrible fire here in Paris about 2 weeks ago. But even before the shock of seeing one of Paris's and maybe even Europe's most famous landmarks went up in flames, the arguing about almost every aspect regarding the Notre-Dame already took off. The walls were still very hot.
Yes.
The firefighters were still there. They stayed about a week to secure the building. Now, it has been 2 weeks since that devastating fire, and there have been tears and shock. Then it changed into a bit of optimism because the walls were still standing there. But yeah, why are the French not happy, or what are they quarreling about
maybe
now?
I don't know. What are they not quarreling about? Because we have seen debates about absolutely everything regarding this Notre-Dame church. If it wasn't for the state of the cathedral from the beginning,